All right, good morning. Welcome in for another Friday Safety Focus of the Week. Today is July 8th. Looking like it's going to be a gorgeous day. This week's code of conduct is to work in an environmental conscientious manner. Ben, you have any words of wisdom on this code item?
Yeah, another way to think that I always think about it is that we like to operate with integrity with everything that we do, and that's kind of what this means, doing the right thing when it comes to the environment.
Yep. Taking care of the great state that we live in. So another 7 days without a recordable injury. Good job on this short week. Let's close it out strong. Again, let's kick it off with a good JHA after the safety meeting, and let's get those in. As you can see, we've been hitting that hard doing audits on our JHA, so we're going to continue that effort until we get up to 100% compliance on all of our projects. With that said, we got a lot to talk about, so I'm going to kick it over to Austin for the safety topic of the week. So go ahead, Austin, take controls.
All right. Sorry, having a little difficulty switching over. What's going on? Sorry. Sorry, there's multiple screens is driving me nuts right now. All right, can everybody see that now?
Got it.
Well, oh, sorry. All right. I decided to talk about overhead clearance. We've had not our issue, but there have been some things happening recently.
We're seeing this.
Oh, we're seeing that.
Drag this over.
There you go. Yeah. We have had some issues lately, or we haven't, but subcontractors had. Overhead clearance, 1 in every 10 deaths on a construction site are from electrocution, and the majority of these deaths are from contacting overhead power lines. They're typically not insulated. Any coverings you see are generally just for weather protection. And if a power line is struck, the safe thing to do for an operator is to remain in the vehicle, because the electricity is flowing around the outside of the vehicle and into the ground. And if you step out onto the ground, you're gonna ground yourself, and that's why workers on the ground are more likely to be killed or injured. And it's pretty obvious to see for most people to see the hazards that are in their direct line of sight, and a lot of times people forget to look up. We had a little incident over at Middlebury Snowball where a dump truck got into some lines when dumping, and even after Matt told me about it, I was like, where's that line, Dad? I didn't see it. So even I'm at fault of that sometimes. So equipment, dump trucks, things like that should never come within 10 feet of the power line. And for cranes, because they have a swing load on them, they shouldn't come any closer than 25 feet. These are some of the scenarios where you can come in contact with a line. Moving a ladder to one area or another on the job site, moving scaffold around. A lot of times using forklift, bucket truck, boom truck, scissor lift, excavator. That's what we would run into a lot here. Also, while operating a crane. If you're working, on a roof or something and you have a long tool or a piece of material, it can, go off the edge and come in contact with the power line. And then raising a dump truck bed, like I said, they had the issue there in Middlebury. It wasn't a power line, but it was still an overhead line that they need to be aware of. Some of the protections and warnings, install flags or signs or both at the proper distances so people can see them when they need to. If the operator cannot see the power line, make sure there's a spotter there. Just to make sure that they know exactly where they are. And if you cannot maintain adequate clearances, call the power company and have them come and insulate, move, or de-energize the line depending on the work that you're going to be performing. And that's all I really have.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah.
We have a
Okay.
lot of overhead warning signs, or it's a good administrative control. So if you have overhead lines on your project that you may kind of identify as a at risk or an unsafe condition, let's add those signage, contact health and safety, and we can either help display those signs on site or put them in a location where you can find them. Again, all those signs are located in the tent way out back in the yard. All
Sounds
right,
good.
I
Thanks.
think we got an announcement from Ben McKinney on fuel logs. We want to jump to that?
Sounds good. I'll share my other screen here. You guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah, we're looking at the Teams channel.
Cool. All right, so off-road transfer tanks, off-road diesel transfer tanks. You've always been required to log fuel that goes into them and fuel that goes out from them into equipment. That's always been a thing. We've gotten a little lax on it. Safety department created a form machine within the Teams app to streamline this, and a lot of guys are using it. Some guys are using the old paper form, and some guys aren't doing anything. So we made the decision to consolidate this reporting, and we're just going to use the Teams app moving forward. So every transfer tank fill up is required to be logged in Teams, and every distribution from that transfer tank to equipment is required to be logged in Teams. That includes bulk tanks. So if you have a service coming to fill up a stationary like 500-gallon tank on your job site, that gets logged too. That includes rental equipment, and we can answer any questions that you have. I just wanted to walk people through the process in Teams. This is on my desktop. On a tablet or a phone, it would look similar. And one of the first things that people might say is, well, a lot of the guys that I have that are doing fueling may not have a tablet, or they may not have a company phone. Well, we can help anybody that wants it get Teams on their personal phone. Of course, we can't require that. So if you run into that, you can come up with your own system, but ultimately the crew leader, the person that's also doing time and doing foundation entries, needs to be putting this stuff in. So if you want to maintain, a paper log like we used to do, and have guys on your site hand that in, and the crew leader, operating foreman, whoever wants to put that in, that's fine. It just needs to get in, and it needs to get in by the end of the week. So how do you do it? You go into foreman and supers, form machines, the same place we find our JHAs, same place we find incident reports. We have fuel log right here. You can see people that have been doing it recently. That's great. We go new submission. Here's where we say whether we are fueling a tank or we are fueling a piece of equipment from a tank. So we'll just start out with the simpler of the two. I'm going to fill a transfer tank. We have preloaded most or all of the trucks that have transfer tanks. If a truck on your crew or your truck is missing, please let, I think the safety department seems to be the most up to speed with form machines. Please let the safety department know. You can let me know too.
Yep.
So we'll go 750 Ford F550, and I put 95 gallons of off-road diesel into that tank. I'm not going to click submit because I don't want bad data to throw things off, but it's that easy. Now I get my full fuel tank back to my job site, and I need to fill equipment. There's a couple more fields on this one. Fueling equipment, I click that second button. I select where it's coming from, 750. I'm going to fill an excavator. I'm going to fill in excavator number 529. And she was thirsty. She took 70 gallons. I've only got 20 left. And this is important for hours on equipment. We track hours and equipment utilization in a number of ways. Of course, when we use this stuff, we bill it to our job, just like our own time. But the actual hours off the meter is important for fuel use auditing, and it's also really important for the service department. That's how guys like Pat and Larry can schedule services. So if you see an air filter that hasn't been changed for 1,000 hours on a machine that's been on your job site for 1.5 years, but you haven't been doing these, it makes sense why the service department may not be aware that it's due for service. So I put in my hours, 9,241 hours. And there's also a field here where it says maintenance or repairs needed. Now, if this thing is hemorrhaging hydraulic oil, or if it looks like the boom's about to fall off, I probably don't want to put that here. But if I have something that maybe isn't quite such a big deal, that would be a good place to put it. You know, maybe I need a replacement mirror, or maybe maybe one of my tracks is making a lot of noise. When Pat gets the hour report at the end of the month, he'll get that too, and he can add that to his list. Again, I'm not going to submit this, but that's what I would do. So this is a requirement. We're going to be reaching out when people aren't doing it. It's important. It doesn't have to be a big deal and take you a bunch of extra time. This is a pretty efficient system. If you do not have a meter on a transfer tank in your truck or in a truck that's in your charge, get with Chico. We've got a bunch of meters, and you know, maybe not overnight, but we're gonna work them in. We're gonna schedule any truck without a working meter as practical to get a meter on it. And same thing on a bulk tank. If you don't have a meter on a bulk tank, let's talk. We can figure this out. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, just contact Health and Safety if there's any issues with that fuel log, and we'll get it resolved.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
Ken.
Thank you.
Take it over. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, fuel is expensive and important to track and everything at this point, especially, and hopefully prices come down a little bit, but I don't see it going back to where it was. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. You see my screen?
We got it.
All right, good. So for the announcements, we had our fuel and equipment log tracking on Teams briefing by Ben. Thank you, Ben. And then also congratulations to Ken Howard on promotion to superintendent. Pretty exciting stuff there. Ken's been involved in a lot of high profile projects and done really well. So I'm excited to see him promoted. Also, the sign up for the Champlain Valley Fair tickets is an ongoing announcement. Each employee is entitled to 2 adult tickets, and if requested, a couple children tickets. So the important thing to know right now is that the deadline is the 14th, which is next Thursday. So make sure you get to it this week by calling Scott Dean or stopping by or emailing him. And we have some new employees this week. We have Drew Sipple and John Deso. If we have pronounced their names right, I think I did. Welcome aboard, guys, and I hope to see you around the sites. Also, I still have on here the ECI Primary Care Wellness Program link, so check it out if you're not already enrolled. Check it out because it can be pretty important to do. Also, it can be a good health improvement thing and potentially give you, some less expensive health care.
And can I jump in?
Yeah.
Can I just jump in real quick? I got a message from Beth. She's going to be reaching out to all the members that haven't had their annual physical yet, and it's been over a year. So there'll be a call coming from Champlain Medical to schedule your annuals for existing members.
Well, that's a good reminder, and also keep in mind that this program is it's set up so that you have to keep involved in your health, your own health, in your wellness, and that's done by going to the healthcare provider in this case provided by Champlain Medical. And if you don't, then you lose your benefits to the other services like the urgent care portion of it. So that's part of the deal is getting your yearly physical. I'm assuming it would probably be quicker than the initial one. And then they can go by your baseline results from last year and say you're good, or maybe you need to work on something.
Yep.
So for weather this week, nothing serious on the horizon. That's good. And we see just lots of sunshine in the National Weather Service icons here, and weather that doesn't look extreme in any way. So sounds good. Perfect summer weather. And for this week, we're profiling the Talcott Road culvert repair done for the town of Williston. And we're contracted with the town on this design build culvert repair of the failing east barrel of the double culvert for the Allen Brook. The existing culvert consists of an 11-foot wide by 7-foot high multi-plate squash pipe that had been failing by corrosion of the invert, which caused heaving of the bottom and sinkholes in the road above. The road was closed to through traffic after the town noticed the sinkholes. ECI was called in to propose a fix. A repair design consists of a cast-in-place invert slab with curb walls attached to the existing culvert sides, which had not experienced any corrosion. Most of the corrosion was really at the invert level, which is exposed to like gravels and sands, just abrading away the galvanized coating mostly, I would say, and causing that steel to corrode much faster. Everything else was good, intact steel. The existing culvert was attached to the curb walls with shear studs to provide lateral load transfer from the overburden forces. So all that load coming down from above has to get down into the slab, and those shear studs provide that. And there was a minimum 7-inch thick invert slab, which provided lateral load resistance and provided a bearing surface to support all loads above. The repair required a temporary bracing design to provide lateral stability for the culvert during construction. The temporary braces were installed at 8-foot spacing as the existing culvert invert was removed and excavated for the slab, and these struts were left in place until the curb walls were built. The invert was constructed in 3 pours. The curb walls were poured separately on the completed invert slab. Bump ahead here. Trying to miss something. Yep. Okay. So the stream bypass consisted of a Jersey barrier or sandbag diversion to the west barrel. It was convenient having a second barrel, of course. Dewatering was performed with some electric sumps, and the work was suspended for a day when a recent rainstorm dumped over an inch of rain. And the west barrel was replaced in 2016 by ECI. So this is looking downstream from on the original. You can see on the edges, especially right here near the front, but it continued all the way through. There was severe deterioration and some slight heaving and uplifting of the invert because of that. Because what's trying to happen is the pipe, of course, it was kind of squash pipe, acts a little different than a round pipe. But if you think of a round pipe, everything's working in compression. It's a compression ring, and if you have failure of the, especially the bottom or any point, what will happen is it'll start to try to push that bottom in, and when it does, it lifts it up. This is my little survey of the bottom. I leveled the this 6-foot level across the bottom, supported by the nut and bolt on the side. And then I just took measurements of the depth of the bottom just to get a profile and to get some dimensions. It was hard to get a good dimension, cross-sectional dimension of any pipe like this that's not totally round, especially when it's gone through some deformations. And of course, as anyone knows who's put these things together, what the shape is on paper isn't always like what it really is. There's a lot of fit up things, and and when you put load on them, when you move them around, lifting them in place, and when you're putting them in place by a lifter or so on, the shape is not perfectly as expected. So I needed a good profile or a good cross section. And then we came up with a concept that we gave to the town. Essentially, as I described, we have an invert slab. First we excavate out the bottom, put the strut in at those 8-foot spacings, and then we would put the reinforced concrete slab in, and then these curb walls with little shear studs on attached to the side wall of the culvert. So here we can see they're doing the first pour at the outlet end after dewatering, getting set up and excavating out. The shear studs are on the wall there. Just use rebar cutoffs because there are a lot of drops on this job. And then we're pouring in the invert here. Had some timber bracing at the edges to hold it out because the steel struts didn't really start until we got inboard a little bit further. You can see what it looks like from the downstream bank when they're doing this initial pour at the invert. There's the other barrel that's taking the water, the 2016 construction. And here we go. Looking towards the outlet, I believe. These are the struts in place. See some of the shear studs and the slab, completed slab, and then the setting up the curb wall forms beyond on the completed slab. And again, working around these struts were a pain, but it was important to keep the shape and the stability of the culvert during the work, because we took out that bottom, and without the bottom there really isn't much to hold it. It becomes a horseshoe, and it needs that resistance at the center. So you can see if you had to walk down the whole thing, it would be a lot of stepping up and over. And then you see kind of in the background here, actually, let me just go back one slide. Yeah, you can see we excavated out with a mini excavator without the roll cage because we didn't have to worry about much for overturning there. And then we're on flat level surface for the most part, so it worked. We could take the roll cage off. We used a mini skid steer to pull the material out, and the little excavator scratched out the bottom. So a lot of smaller quantity material management here. Got it to the end, loaded it in a truck. It's a 100-foot long culvert. And this is more the inlet end. You see the Jersey barrier for the cofferdam, getting ready for the final invert pour. Here you can see this metal coming out of the bottom. Other than where it was corroded, it was still pretty heavy gauge. I think it's like a 12 gauge, 10 or 12 gauge, and it was corroded and ripped on the edges, but you see beyond that, there was pretty solid pieces. We also took out all the soil from the invert from the same location. And there's Luke loading up the dumpsters with the scrap metal from the log truck. And this was a couple days ago with a completed culvert on the outlet end. You see the curb walls installed, and the sitting next to the original, or the 2016 one. There's about 9 foot of overburden on that culvert. So from the photo archives, I have the Talcott Road culvert west barrel replacement, Williston, back in 2016. So here we assembling. Actually, this is not a multi-plate, I don't believe. It doesn't look like it. I believe it came in these pieces. Yeah, I'm pretty certain it came in pieces like this, and then we installed them and put collars on them, I would say, what happened there. You can see the little cranes in there. We had the whole road closed again. There was also a water main. One of the reasons the town was anxious to get this fixed because of the water line above. So that's what I got. I'll turn it back to you, Matt. Have a good, safe day out there. And one thing I didn't mention is the COVID protocols. There has been some COVID lately, including myself. I'm currently on, out of the office quarantining, not necessarily quarantining like the old days, but in, keeping my distance. I'm on day 4 of my 5-day from the positive test, right? That's the way it works, Matt. When you get it, you got 5 days away from work to kind of quarantine, self-quarantining yourself. I'm working from home. Now I'm feeling better. It was like a severe head cold, but after a couple days, my energy came back, so that's good, and I'm raring to go now.
Yep, glad that you're in the mend. And glad that you're doing your part to prevent the spread to others. So we appreciate it.
Yep. Okay. All right. Have a good day out there. Be safe. Have a good weekend.
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining. Good attendance this morning. If you watch in a group setting, please send it over in text or email. It'd be much appreciated so we can capture this morning's attendance. We'll be out visiting job sites today and also helping individuals with our fuel log in teams. So any questions, feel free to ask Austin, myself as well during that, our new phase of recording. Have a safe day. Let's have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Matt. See you later. Thanks, Austin.